Hey guys, today we're going to talk about some forgotten classic cars you can buy that will make you stand out from the crowd at a car show. Now, for the sake of this video, I've chosen a few cars that I rarely see at car shows or in modern media, if at all. While these cars certainly do have their fans, they have either been kept under the radar by their more famous siblings or their fame has simply already come and gone. This list is in no particular order, and feel free to tell me about more forgotten cars in the comments below. Now, let's get into it. Alright, number 1 is the 1955 Pontiac Safari. So, in the mid-1950s, GM figured the market wanted a sporty two-door wagon, perfect for a young driver to haul their entire life in. From this, the 1955 Chevrolet Nomad was born, and it was so iconic that even now you'll find them for almost $100,000, meaning I unfortunately am probably never going to own one. But all is not yet lost, because at the exact same time Pontiac came out with the Safari, which is pretty much just a Chevrolet Nomad with a different skin and motor. The Nomad and Safari both have pretty similar design cues, including the sloped pillars, the coupe-style doors, and of course the curved glass. However, if you ask me, the Pontiac version kind of just looks a bit better. Mostly due to the chieftain-style front end and the trim that makes it perfect for two-tone paint jobs, which I'm a huge fan of. Two-tone paint jobs look okay on Nomads, I guess, but without chrome trim separating them, in my opinion, they just kind of look a little sloppy and cheap. They're not completely easy to find, but I see the Safaris come up on Facebook every once in a while for around 10K. Number 2, the 1959 Buick Electra. Here we got another car suffering from little brother syndrome. It's the 1959 Buick Electra. Now, one of these I've personally never seen in person, even here in California where classic cars are an everyday occurrence. The 1959 Electra came in both 2-door and 4-door options, and both had a massive 6.6-liter V8 and a 2-speed automatic transmission. The powertrain is cool and all, but man, what really gets me is the front end and back end. For a full-size car, this thing just looks like it's going 100 miles an hour, even when it's parked in a driveway. The giant chrome grille and 4 eyes headlights makes it look downright furious as it cruises down the Hollywood Boulevard. The back end is even cooler, with some giant 45-degree wings that look like something Batman would drive. And again, the chrome trim makes it perfect for a two-dome paint job, which, again, I really love. Whether you're a mob boss or Bruce Wayne, this car will impress anybody who's looking at it. Just be prepared to answer the "what's that?" question anytime you're out and about. Now, you may be asking, why is such a beautiful car so often overlooked? Well, it just so happens that in 1959, Cadillac was absolutely dominating the market with the Coupe de Ville, one of the most iconic cars of the time, even when it came out. And with the Buick being considered one step less classy than Cadillac in the public eye, it's no wonder why these kind of faded into obscurity. These cars, again, aren't super common, but I have seen a couple available on Facebook. They do need some work, but in my opinion, they're so worth it. Number 3, we got the 1951 Studebaker Commander Regal Starlight Coupe. Man, that is a mouthful. Studebaker is one of those brands that's always been on the outskirts. They made some pretty sick cars, but never enough to even touch the big 3 back in the day. That said, that doesn't mean that they made garbage, and by far their coolest car, in my opinion, is the 1951 Studebaker Commander V8 Champion Starlight Coupe. I am not gonna lie, that name just sounds like they couldn't decide which one was the coolest and threw them all in there. Now, I could talk engine trims and all that stuff, but let's be honest, the main course here is the body. I've never seen a body like that, especially not from the early 50s where companies were still using pre-war bodies with kind of slight changes to fulfill demand. This thing looks so ahead of its time, already having rocket-style looks before the space race even started. I mean, just look at this thing, and the best part is, this body looks awesome no matter how you mod it. You want to turn it into a hot rod? Thing looks crazy. Chop the top and add some wood panels, fits the car's vibes perfectly. I've never seen a stock body lend itself so perfectly to aftermarket tastes. And I guarantee you, no matter how you mod it, people are going to be breaking their necks just to take a look. Alright, number 4, the 1953 Chevrolet Belair. Everybody knows the Belair template, but most people only think of the Tri-5, and for a very good reason. They're some of the first Chevys to have a full redesign since the pre-war period, and a lot of people forget, but throughout World War II, most car companies completely stopped production of automobiles to create tanks, planes, all that kind of stuff for the war effort. After the war came to an end in 45, the big 3 had to rush to meet demand for the winning side, and as a result, a lot of cars had reskinned versions of older models. It wasn't until 1955 that the Chevrolet came in with a new body style, but I digress. We're not talking about the Tri-5, we're talking about the first Belair. The Belair nameplate was around since 1950, but it wasn't until 1953 that it was upgraded to its own model, not just a trim package. Think of this car as a Chevy 210 on steroids. You got a fancy two-tone paint job, again, love them, lots of chrome, a rudimentary climate system, and it was the first year to have a one-piece windshield. Wasn't the fastest car in the world with a 0 to 60 in about 20 seconds, but man, it looked good doing it. I'll admit I'm a little biased because my grandfather and I owned this car together and it's got a lot of great memories, but if you can find one, I'd highly recommend getting your hands on it. You see them every once in a while, and they're even rarer if you have the Sport Coupe variant that doesn't have a post after the door. As far as I've seen, mine is the only Sport Coupe around, so boom, I get to flaunt that in people's faces, which is awesome. You can find the non-Sport Coupes running anywhere between 7 to 8,000, depending on where you are. Number 5, the 1971 to 1974 AMC Javelin. Alright, I've seen a couple of these around, but not nearly as much as you would think. The AMC Javelin has a cult following at this point, but by most people's point of view, it's largely viewed as a forgotten muscle car, or pony car, depending on who you ask. Chances are, if you ask your grandpa to think of as many muscle cars as possible, he's probably going to leave this one out. The AMC Javelin is one of the most beautiful cars I've ever seen, mostly due to the fender hump sticking out of the hood, and it's one of those cars that just exudes power, especially because they're so uncommon. And if you're a hot rodder that wants to go fast, then you can't do much better than a beefcake of a car that weighs roughly 3,000 pounds even. Stock parts may be hard to come by, but if you throw a Chevy engine in there with the right upgrades, you'll be in the sub-11s in no time. Buying them is a bit of a shot in the dark though, as I've seen slightly restored versions go for 10K, and rust buckets go for 25. It's completely random. Alright, number 6. I'm going to get a little bit of flack for this, but the 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner. Now, I know what you're thinking. The Plymouth Roadrunner is one of the most iconic cars of all time. How can it be on this list? Well, there's two reasons. One is screw you, it's my video, and the second is that I genuinely think that this car's popularity kind of peaked in the late 90s, early 2000s, because I don't see them get brought up very often at all anymore. I mean, think about it. When's the last time you've seen the 70 in a movie or a game? The only one I can think of in recent times is in Fast and Furious 4, and then in a blink and you miss it cameo in 7. Other than that, I haven't seen it in games, movies, even TV shows, and people always leave it out of their top 10s of the most favorite muscle cars of all time. Even the Buick GSX is on that list more often because it's kind of gained an underground fame in recent years. Which is fine, that's my favorite muscle car, it's why I bought a Skylark, but still, it's getting beaten in popularity by a Buick. Which is a shame, because I always thought the 70 Roadrunner was the epitome of muscle. It looked beefy, it had a huge motor, and most importantly, it was in the 2003 Hot Wheels World Race movie, which in my 3-year-old mind was the biggest honor a car could get. Now that I think about it, the Hot Wheels community showed way more appreciation for the car than my muscle groups. Go figure. Anyways, finding a real Roadrunner is expensive, but the satellites look almost exactly the same and can easily be made into a clone if you wanted. I just saw one running and driving with a finished interior and half decent paint, sell for about 13K. Go buy one, I'd love to see these make a comeback, so long as it's after I've bought one. Number 7, the 1948 through 52 Ford F-Series. When people think of the Ford F-Series, a lot of them think of the second generation, which, who can blame them, it's a sick truck. But in my opinion, people constantly overlook the original made from 48 to 52. I think personally most of it has to do with the fact that the second gens lend themselves a lot better to resto modding in modern setups, whereas no matter what you do, a 49 is going to look like an old truck. Seriously, whenever people try to resto mod, it just doesn't look right in my opinion. These things were built to be farm trucks, and when they play to their strengths, they look awesome. Plus, the van version was a freaking gravedigger, and that's awesome, so if you're a truck guy and really want to stand out against the crowd, I'd recommend picking up one of these. They got the flathead motors, which still have a decent following, so keeping the stock engine isn't as much of a money pit as with other vehicles. They're decently cheap too. I've seen fully restored ones go for around 20K post-COVID, so it's a pretty easy truck to work on. With a fresh motor, they're known to be pretty reliable. Number 8, we're going to keep this Ford train going with the 1955 through 1957 Ford Thunderbird. These were popular back in the day, but in the years since they've come out, they're really paling next to Corvettes of the same year. They were plenty fast for the time, and they looked great doing it, especially the 57 model because it had the cool wings. Plus, it had both a hard and soft top, so you didn't get that awkward soft top silhouette so many modern cars have. Talking to you, 370Z. Like the Roadrunner, these have fallen off sharply in the recent years, with the only people really appreciating them nowadays are being old heads. These things are beautiful and timeless, unlike the F-Series I was just talking about. You can hot rod them, resto mod them, keep them classic, and each version is going to look pretty sick. And because they're overshadowed by the Vet, they're going to be pretty affordable. There's a 56 running and driving for sale for about $8,000 near me. I'm in California, where gas for $390 is basically a blessing from God. Last but not least, 1950 Buick Special. Specifically the one with the jetpack. Alright, this one's from out of left field, and maybe it's because I'm a bit of a Buick fanboy, as you could probably tell from this list, but this has to be my favorite one here. In the late 40s, Buick was in a bit of a slump. Compared to Chevrolet's Fleet Line and Pontiac's Chieftain, they were kind of stuck in the past. So, what do you do when your car looks outdated and nobody wants to buy it? If you said to redesign the body or build up a new, better engine, you are absolutely right, but Buick didn't do either of those things. Instead, they decided to just put a huge chomping grille in the front. Funny enough, it worked. All of a sudden, they were selling a lot more because it was just so cool looking. It's like the equivalent of having a 99 Civic and throwing a bunch of aero at it. It really shouldn't have worked, but it did. And because of it, it's now one of my dream cars from that time period. They also lend themselves really well to resto modding as seen here, and there's not many engines around nowadays that sound like a straight 8. Alright, little honorable mention at the end, T-Buckets. Since these are just hot rodder versions of Model Ts, I figured it wouldn't be right to put them next to the other stock vehicles on this list. That said, I still want to include them because they were the original hot rod style, and they were super common in the 20s and 30s. Most of the people that grew up seeing these cars have passed away, so that means the T-Bucket is starting to go the way of the Dodo, and that makes me sad. You only see them at like 1 out of every 5 car shows, and even less of them are period correct rods of the flathead or something. So yeah, I wanted to bring them up. I don't want these cars to go away. They're sick. Alright, that does it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any forgotten cars you want to bring up, let me know down below. And those that have been here for a while, what do you think of this new video format? It's not as high-end as the work that I used to do, but now that I have a company to run, it's really all I can do nowadays. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Peace.